Hi, this is Christine Thompson with Baird & Warner, the lead agent on the CT team, bringing you another service series video. And I'm really excited about today because I got Chip Wagner III with us. And he is an appraiser and an extremely experienced appraiser. So that's why I invited Chip to do this video. And Chip, you were so kind to take time out to do that because I know you are super busy right now. So I'll try not to take up too much of your time.
Sure.
One of the first things that buyers and sellers and actually list agents, as a listing agent, when I get in a call from an appraiser, I always want to know, okay, how experienced are you in this area? Do you know the area well? So what qualifies an appraiser getting hired for a particular appraisal in a certain area?
Sure. That's an interesting question to lead off with. There's something in our profession called geographic competency. So in theory, the appraiser should be coming from a certain geographic area and nearby. I believe that a good appraiser can appraise anywhere. My license allows me to appraise in the entire state of Illinois. I've appraised in 19 counties, but I would say 90% of my work is in 5 counties. So as an experienced appraiser that's taken the classes, and a good appraiser can go anywhere if they take the time. So oftentimes homeowners and some people think, why is that appraiser coming from 30, 40, 50 miles away to do a particular assignment? Sometimes that could be a warning bell, and sometimes it may be a real good appraiser that knows that market and is experienced in that market. So
all right, well that's good to know. But so my next question is, appraisals are always the big question mark with people. And, I've had experiences when there's multiple offers and I give the multiple offers because there are no comps when a home sells over list, seems above the market price, market values that are out there. How does an appraiser approach something like that?
That's a great question as well. An appraiser is supposed to read the market and report to their client the current market conditions. So in the experiences you're dealing with appraisers, it's usually a purchase of a property and they're coming out and doing the appraisal for the lender. We're currently today in 2021 in a real hot market where they are selling above list and the comps are scarce. We have underwriters and reviewers that look at our reports. So you can't just arbitrarily push the number up high, you have to have support for it. So a good appraiser is going to be looking at active listings, currently under contract homes, which is a very key indicator of a moving market. I put into my business, I run statistics that really hone in on using regression, watching the trends. I look at year-over-year sales. I look at what houses are selling and reselling for. And sometimes, you can't just settle for what homes in your immediate subdivision. A buyer doesn't move to an area, say, I want to live in that subdivision. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Right. You have to possibly consider market areas outside of that immediate area with, within reasonable distance in the same school district, things like that. So
what's considered a reasonable distance?
Well, Fannie Mae used to have a parameter that was adopted by Freddie Mac and VA and all of the lenders that it was 1 mile, but no longer do they have that actual requirement of 1 mile. It just depends on the complexity of the appraisal report. I just received an order today of a 4,000 square foot ranch home in an area that's a pretty scarce property. I'm looking at a 10-mile radius for comparables. Other times, you can find everything you need right in the subdivision or the subdivision right next door or nearby. So reasonable according to the powers that be is within 1 mile, but oftentimes my comparables go outside of 1 mile looking for good data.
Now, what if let's say there's a subdivision and, and there was a lot of activity and a lot of closed homes. Is there, if you could get all the comps within a subdivision, is that first and foremost, like if you could find 3 closed comps in that same neighborhood, are you handcuffed to that? Like you got to use those, you can't go outside and beyond busy perimeters?
That depends on what the purpose of the appraisal is and who you're doing it for. So
if it's for, buyer purchasing a home, it's a residential sale.
So I lead in with that statement that if you hired me to do an appraisal on a property, I'm going to give you a real number based on the true comparables. In the lending world, they've gotten very automated with our appraisals since 2008 or 9, where there's a computerized collateral underwriter that actually looks at your appraisal and finds comparables for you, and it will question you if you're using comparables outside of an area and there's comparables closer by and things like that. So you have automation in our industry that checks out what we do. We have trained reviewers, we have underwriters that aren't trained appraisers. So
Yeah.
So, that all being said, in the lending world, which is the experiences with most of the purchases that you're going to deal with and your clients, we have to pretty much find things that are going to fit the system. If I'm doing a corporate relocation or a divorce or estates and trusts or cash buyers, sellers situations, those are all different. Those my hands aren't tied as much, and it allows me to do a true appraisal per se, if you will.
Right. So now let's say there's plenty of closed comps in that neighborhood, but the subject home is a sprawling ranch, and all the other comps that closed, none of them are a sprawling ranch. They're very, it's an oddball house that's under contract and you're doing an appraisal on. In that situation, would it be acceptable to go outside of that neighborhood to find other sprawling ranches versus having to stick to the homes that are in that neighborhood that are very different?
Absolutely. There's neighborhoods where you and I are located here regionally and locally that 98%, 99% of the neighborhood is 2-story homes, and then you have that one unique ranch. And just because there's a handful of ranches, have they sold in the last 3, 6, 9 months, 24 months? Probably not. So we do expand our net into a broader area, looking for similar size, hopefully the same schools, and similar, the one I was referring to earlier that I got the new appraisal on, I found a great comp, but it was on 2 acres and mine was on a third of an acre. So you really can't, someone who's going to buy 2 acres with well and septic unincorporated is not going to be the same buyer buying one in a subdivision. So
right, exactly. So you do a lot of digging.
Yeah, and that's the challenge. I mean, in recent times, we've had a real undersupplied market with a lot of activity. So in previous times, sometimes it's an oversupply and the data is just all over the place. It's an ebb and flow situation. So
now let's say an appraisal comes in and it comes in lower than the contract price. It's a big concern. In what situations could a buyer or a seller push back and say, we don't agree with that appraisal? And in what circumstances would an appraiser feel comfortable changing the value on an appraisal?
Right. If the appraisal doesn't come in at the number, and oftentimes the real estate contracts that you're writing say that it has to appraise out per se. And if it doesn't, the buyer and the seller can negotiate and come between the middle. The lender can still make the appraisal and ask the buyer to come down with more money, or you can also challenge that appraisal. And that doesn't happen with me very often, but occasionally you'll get the lender that will come back, and say that you're getting I forgot the exact term of what it is, but it's basically an appeal for you to take a look at other data. The way to get it in front of that is to meet the appraiser at the property and share with them the comparables.
Because I heard it's pretty tough to get, if you're challenging an appraisal and trying to get that value changed on the appraisal, I've bbeen told it's like, it better be factual things that had to be changed instead of just, well, we think this is worth, the granite's worth this, or, the improvements are worth that. What does it take for an appraiser to be willing to say, okay, I'll change it?
Appraisers aren't we're not all the same. We're different, and some have bigger egos than others and won't want to budge. But if somebody challenged my appraisal, I would look at all the information and I would either take it into consideration and modify or change my appraisal, or I would explain why I didn't use that data or why I don't think it's the best comps. And so there's no hard fast rule saying
unless we put in the wrong number of bedrooms or the wrong number of garage bay count, things like that, there still is a chance to appeal an appraisal, even if all the factual information was correct?
You could. Basically, it would be, if the appraiser missed something, not only made a mistake in the appraisal, but if they didn't find good comparables, maybe it's that out of area appraiser that we talked about at the beginning of this discussion, that didn't know that that subdivision 1 mile away is the same builder with the same exact models that have recent sales of really good comps, that a buyer would consider that neighborhood similar to the current neighborhood we're in. So I would say that probably your experiences are it doesn't happen a lot, but if you do challenge the value, you got to do it through the lender. The seller doesn't have as many opportunities as a buyer. Oftentimes the buyer will be happy if it's lower and want to get that come down. So it's their appraisal for their lenders, so they may not even cooperate, with challenging it.
Right. So it depends on the appraiser, and good agents will meet the appraiser and bring comps and all that, and appraisers are allowed to at least listen to what comps agents present to an appraiser, right? Because sometimes I meet with appraisers and they're like, don't give me any comps. I'm not allowed to take any comps. Is that incorrect when they say I'm not allowed to take any comps?
Well, appraisers are independent and we can't be pressured or biased towards one party or another. We're trying to value the property, but and this is something that was taught to me by my father, who was an appraiser, and a good appraiser is going to actually want to cooperate with those parties of the transaction, with real estate agents who, your local market. I know a lot of markets good, your local market's really good. So I count on your expertise, when I go into appraisals too. Oftentimes, you and I may be in the same market, and I know that pretty good, and you can trust that I know that pretty good. But a good appraiser, if I see a challenge, like I don't know how I'm going to hit this number, I'm going to reach back out to you and say, hey, could you give me some ideas or some clarity, or what comps did you do to establish this, or how many, I heard one where there was 28 showings in 48 hours and like 16 offers on a house recently, and that just hasn't happened
that kind of information.
Years.
So would that information be helpful to an appraiser to hear, like, hey, we had 10 written offers, they were all pretty close in value,
Absolutely.
So
I write
helpful.
that into my appraisals. There's a portion that asks, did the appraiser, was the home listed, and please analyze the listing and the sale, and you reviewed the contract. And if it's selling above list price, which I'm seeing right now, I haven't seen it a lot through my career, but this period in time we're seeing it. I have to document why it's sold above list price, and I can find comps that are selling above list price. That's a great situation. I talk to the agents. You can explain to me, we had multiple offers and this was what happened, and you just put that in the appraisal, and you can appraise it above the list price. I've been doing it quite frequently in recent months.
I bet. A lot of it. It's been a historical time right now. In case anybody watching and curious, we're filming this during February-March timeframe of 2021. So, I keep this video out for a long time. So if you hear us referencing about that, at least you have a time frame to put context to our conversation here.
Yeah, we're record low interest rates, and the undersupply of inventory is just crazy right now.
Yeah.
It's a good thing.
Well, there was a house that I showed to a client. They didn't go for it, but apparently it had 101 showings and 40 written offers. So if an agent came to you and said, I had 40 written offers and it went obviously well over list price, that would be a good, strong factor in the appraisal value.
Absolutely. I have a very very close friend who was just transferred to the Dallas area of Texas, and he actually got into a bidding war and got the house for close to $100,000 over the list price.
I'm hearing that. Yeah, I'm hearing that. So if you guys are all watching this video at a very different time frame and it's not happening, thank your lucky stars. Any last wisdom that you would like to share regarding understanding appraisals, what to anticipate for buyers or sellers?
I think the public doesn't often understand that the appraiser is an unbiased, disinterested third party viewing the property, and we're trying to protect our client, and our client oftentimes is the lender, or it could be other types of appraisals who our client is. So most appraisers have a lot of training. To become certified residential appraiser, you need 200 hours of education, pass tests in all those classes, pass a state exam, 2,500 hours of experience in no less than 2.5 years. And prior to that, you have to have a mentor personally sign off on everything you do. To become a commercial appraiser, it's even higher level of education. So,
Wow.
but education isn't always the same as field experience and real life experience as well. So, I've been doing this over 30 years now, and I'm still learning every day in what I do, which knowledge is phenomenal. In the last 24 months, I took a class in statistics where I've learned how to prove and support my appraisal adjustments through regression, which I've added to my tools where I develop an appraisal. So if there's a lot of things, and the industry's evolving. There's about 10 years ago, there was 100,000 appraisers. Right now, I think I just saw there's 68,000 appraisers in the country, something like that. So there's fewer appraisers today.
Awesome.
And more than 70% of them are over the age of 50. So there's not a lot of younger people coming into the industry. But the industry overall is looking for ways to circumvent or not use appraisers. So that's happening. One of my friends in the loan industry.
What's your opinion on all these, Zillow Zestimate and Black Knight and Appraisal.com and Homes. There's all these different sources that have their own algorithms.
Right.
And I guess I'm going to tie that into, when you do appraisals that are not under not under contract, but just a seller is just like, hey, before I put it on the market, I want to know what my house is worth. Is it better to call an appraiser? Should they just do the Zestimate and all that? Or, what's your take on all of this?
So when Zillow first came out, and I don't know if it's a decade ago or even a little more than a decade ago, that was the hot thing with real estate professionals, appraisers, realtors, our whole community. And I embrace those as tools. They are fantastic, if not phenomenal, for trending markets. As far as putting a real value on your piece of real estate, your property, I've seen them 100% accurate, and I've seen them several $100,000 off. Zillow takes very simple public record information and trends the sales dates, and can trend really well. It'll look at things like your lot size, the age of your house, and the square footage of your house. Oftentimes it doesn't know if you have a basement, and if you do, if it's finished. It doesn't know how many car garage you have. It doesn't know if you've remodeled your home or completely gutted and rehabbed it. It works well in what we call cookie cutter, simple neighborhoods, and they don't work well the more complex the homes and the neighborhoods you get into. So,
when you get those unique homes. I heard one time a hospital was within a radius and it was pulled as one of the comps. Kind of skewed the number a little bit.
Well, in Zillow, I live in a subdivision in Naperville, Illinois, and Zillow pulls townhomes from my neighborhood to comp my house. And I live in a 4,000 square foot single family detached residence, and it's using townhomes to value my house. So, I mean, it's a tool. I always say a really good real estate agent or a really good appraiser, we do the same things. We come at it a little bit differently, how we ended up with our number. We may not come in with the exact number, but oftentimes we're pretty close, give or take a couple percent or 5%. I certainly recommend, people that for sale by owner, they can leave money on the table by not either having a professional appraisal or a realtor or two come out and give them real market analysis to really help coach them with what's going on in the current market.
Yeah, for sure. I tell a lot of people, be careful about going the value per square foot, because you could have two homes above grade, the same square foot, but one's a 3-car, one's a 2-car. One has a fabulously finished basement. The other one is partial basement unfinished with a crawl, and none of that's in the square footage. You know, people get caught up in this price per square foot. I'm like, go away from that.
As an appraiser, I meet homeowners that will give me lists of price per square foot, and they think that's how they should be buying properties. But all the different things you just mentioned, we call them items of comparison. A price per square foot doesn't know if you have a cul-de-sac lot back into a park, or a corner lot on a siding a busy street. It doesn't know if you're completely remodeled or if it's an original house built in the 1970s. It doesn't know if the basement's finished or not. So yeah, price per square foot is again, I call it a tool, but it's not really relevant, and it's not how appraisers come up with value.
And that's probably, you know, where all these algorithms, you know, Zestimate and all that, they're doing a lot of it based on just addresses and square footage.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, so that's why you got to be a little careful. Well, Chip, you've been awesome and incredibly knowledgeable and great information. So all of you watching out there, if you do need an appraisal, call Chip. He's the man.
Thanks, Christine.
All right.
I
appreciate it. No, I appreciate you and your time. And I'm sure everyone that has watched this and will be watching it will really, really appreciate the information that you gave. We're providing your contact information. Can they send you an email with questions? You know, what's the best way you would like them to get in touch with you?
Absolutely. You can share my office phone number as well as my email. With the robocalls that are out there these days, I don't pick up my phone very often unless I know the name on the caller ID. But emails, I do respond to emails.
Awesome.
So yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
That's great. Well, Chip Wagner III, thank you again. An awesome appraiser, doing it for, you said, almost 30 years, you said?
I signed my first appraisal before I had a driver's license, working for my father.
Wow.
That was in 1984, and I've been full-time appraiser since I finished college in 1990. So yeah, it's in my blood. Been doing it a while.
Awesome. Just like me, I'm a second-generation realtor. It's in my blood.
Wonderful.
So awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, Chip. I'll definitely be keeping in touch with you, and you have a fantastic day. Everyone, thank you for watching this service series video. I hope you appreciated the information. I got a whole bunch of other shows you can watch. Just go to YouTube and just search me in there. You'll find a whole bunch of service series videos covering all kinds of topics in real estate, and I hope you find them all useful. Have a great day.